So let's raise the big question. Is this really the mother of all deals as the EU leaders and India are describing it? Is that hype or substance? Can this deal now counter Trump's tariffs? Modi government's trade policy moving in the right direction? And will the EU end up benefiting more than India? Just some of the questions we'll raise. Velina Charkarova is a geopolitical strategist. She's joining us from Vienna. Manjeet Puri is former Indian ambassador to the EU. And Sabyasachi Saha is associate professor at Research and Information System for Developing Countries. I appreciate all of you joining us. I just want to put before, since it was described as a win-win deal, where the wins are seen in this India-EU trade deal for India. The win, of course, for both is a direct entry into a $2 trillion industrial market and a preferential access for Indian engineering goods. So that's good news for engineering. Gems and jewelry get 100% duty-free access. Therefore, it's a $79 billion premium market. Leather and footwear, tariffs have been slashed from 17% to 0%. And textiles and apparel, the win, immediate zero duty on 100% tariff lines and value. Do you believe, Mr. Puri, that this is win-win? I've listed where India could benefit, but there are those who are arguing that Europe could actually benefit far more than India would. We get cheap wine, cheap BMW, but that helps the top sliver of society. Will this actually be a boost to the Indian economy?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me. Yes, I do believe that there is a win-win. All negotiations have certain amounts of give and takes. And, if you think that there won't be a win for the European Union, that won't have happened. Let me say something to you. Trade is the platform on which this deal has been done. But in my understanding, the most important outcome of this will be giving an indication to European businesses, European corporate houses, the second biggest economy in the world, by far even bigger than China, that India is a place where they can do certainty, they can invest here. This is a country where trade possibilities are possible. You can do your entire supply chains can be fairly certain, etc. And so therefore, what it really does for us is it boosts this entire idea of investment from Europe into India in our quest to become Viksit Bharat, a $10 trillion economy by 2047, etc. This is the most important thing. And this is what I believe this trade deal brings to the surface. Trade will go up, but naturally, we have leveled the tariffs, the preferences which least developed countries like Bangladesh had got. That's fine, that's good. Some entree for highly skilled professionals to go and work there. But the signaling for Europeans to invest in India, that in my opinion is the most important. Therefore, win with a big W for India. Of course, the European Union also gains in areas which are of interest to them, quite apart from geopolitics, multi-alignment, and so on and so forth.
I'll come to the geopolitics, Mr. Puri, in a moment. Just to again tell our viewers, the EU market accounts for about 17%, 17% of India's total exports. And the EU's exports to India constitute 9% of its total overseas shipments. Now, Velina Charkarova, this will have to go through the EU for ratification. We've seen with the Mercosur deal that EU has struck with South America that there are certain tangles. Do you believe this deal will go through smoothly, that by the end of this year, we will have a full-blown deal? Announcement made today, but as I said, devil can lie in the details. Will we have a full-blown trade deal with the EU come the end of the year?
Thank you very much for the invitation, and let us congratulate to this amazing achievement, which I agree with my Indian counterpart is win-win, actually win-win deal for both sides, for the European Union and India. And actually, contrary to the Mercosur deal, where some of the issues, in fact, led to disagreements in some of the countries, which again then put on hold the ratification. I do not see these hurdles in the case of the deal between the European Union and India. In fact, I think that we will see the ratification by all 27 member states by the end of the year, because this is a completely different situation. First and foremost, this is a completely different scale of a trade partner. India is en route to becoming world's economic power number 3. It's very, very important for the European common market, and also because some sensitive issues were excluded from the deal right from the beginning. And here the key word, of course, agriculture, and some other issues that will be tackled in the months and the years to come. So all in all, I think there won't be any hurdles for the ratification process.
Sabyasachi, Saha, you've heard two of our guests saying it's win-win. Is your view this is win-win, or should we be a little bit more cautious before celebrating at this moment?
Thank you, Rajdeep, for having me here today. And I have been following throughout the day the developments and the amount of information that has been put out. Clearly, these are extraordinary times, and India's ability to get into an agreement with a market of EU size is commendable. We have already seen the sectors that have been covered, but beyond the fine print, we are looking forward to the market access. But beyond that, if we are looking at the services trade that India has with EU, the possibilities of attracting investment from EU, the technology cooperation in other areas, I think this is the right time, because these are difficult times as well, but this is also the right time for India to get into such, it is commendable, as I've just mentioned, because it is not easy. It was a 20-year duration, but definitely EU finds India to be a reliable partner. India's growth story seems to be convincing, and this is the outcome that we have arrived at a deal today.
I heard the word just now from Mr. Saha, extraordinary times, Mr. Puri, and that's where the geopolitics comes in. We've seen in the last year in particular how Donald Trump in particular has weaponized tariffs, used tariffs to put pressure on India, to put pressure on other countries, including that extraordinary attack that he made on his European allies over Greenland. How much of what Donald Trump has done has pushed, you believe, EU and India, and indeed several other countries to, in a way, diversify their risk, look for other partners, and thereby will this be a counter in any way to what we had hoped would actually have happened at the start of the year, an India-US deal? So is this a substitute for that? Does this put additional pressure on the US to come to the negotiating table once again with India?
Rajdeep, I am not sure it puts any pressure on the United States, given the fact that it's President Trump who calls the shots there. But we never asked him to unleash this particular thing. And trade and flag are two sides of the same coin. So, there is an element of a game. What I find particularly interesting is that the transatlantic divergences, the disturbances which have been caused, now have asked the EU to look at other partners. They were already looking at China, which was a big deal as far as they were concerned, but they now believe that India and Mercosur are also good and important partners. I'm particularly interested in India, and they look at us as good partners for them, not substitutes, but as good partners to hedge their bets in various ways. Similarly, as far as we are concerned, the EU was India's largest trading partner, the largest investor in this country, the geography with which we have the greatest comfort in dealing with them, and so on and so forth. We were interested, again, backing out, making maximalist positions, and so on and so forth. Perhaps the Trumpian push allowed this to go forward. Look, we didn't ask for it, but that's the way it's happened. And this is good for us. It builds our strategic autonomy. And in a sense, the Europeans also do multi-alignment. Perhaps not bad for the world, because multipolarity certainly is something of importance to a country like India, which is going up the global value chain, if I may say so.
Velina, do you agree with that this is the EU's counter in a way to Donald Trump also? Because we've heard people close to Donald Trump say today that the EU is compromising its fight against Russia. It wants to buy cheap oil from India. The United States doesn't seem to be very happy with this deal at the moment.
Well, obviously, Trump and the United States, this administration will not be happy with this deal, because it is counterproductive to the whole tariff strategy that this Trump administration has imposed on both allies and competitors. And basically, with this deal, the European Union and India are showing a third way out of this bifurcation and out of this binary choice between US-centered and China-centered supply chains and centers of productivity and manufacturing and trade. And this is exactly what actually the point is. First and foremost, the largest democracies are coming together. They are going for free trade liberalization. They're opening up to each other, creating 2 billion people common market. On the one hand, the European Union is boosting and is participating in this immense growth that's destined to happen when it comes to India, but at the same time, still the common market, this is the largest actually common market in the world that the European Union has to offer. And there is a major opportunity when it comes to foreign investments. Right now, 140 billion. This is certainly going to increase when it comes to the European investments. And yes, with this deal, both both actors are actually going for optionality. This is exactly the right moment for that. So Trump was certainly a factor, but it was not at the core of the decision to speed up the process, because first and foremost, the negotiations were relaunched in 2022. And we know for a fact what happened in 2022 when the European Union, found out that certain vulnerabilities were actually instrumentalized as a geopolitical weapon. And yes, of course, the Trump factor accelerated the process, and it was in that sense also win-win for both sides to happen right now.
Will this involve, Velina, though, also technology transfer? Because Europe holds some of its intellectual property rights very close to its chest. Do you believe that they will be willing to transfer technologies to India as well?
Yes, I actually, not now, but there is already a technology council. So we have actually a whole plethora of different platforms which are simultaneously happening right now when it comes to the relations between the European Union and India. And within the technological, domain, there are already ongoing conversations and negotiations. Same goes for security and defense, by the way. I mean, there will be also some transfer and some arms deals, which is also good for both sides when it comes to optionality, when it comes to geopolitical realignment, and when it comes to creating actually a hedge against binary choices in an increased bifurcation of the global system, something that's not really working for both actors right now.
Very interestingly, Sabyasachi, Saha, this is the 8th free trade deal India has signed now in the Modi government over the last few years. Is this showing a complete shift in policy? From protectionism, we are now lowering tariffs and we are reaching out to countries. That this is actually, in a way, a sweet spot that we are trying to find to increase our trade basket and hedge from any American-centric trade basket.
Yeah, as you have rightly pointed out, this is a time to diversify, both in terms of exports as well as imports. And as you have rightly mentioned, that this comes at the back of enhanced confidence that India has gained through signing multiple free trade agreements in the recent past, including with developed countries, where we have kind of covered sectors that we were not negotiating earlier. So that brings in regulatory predictability, and also predictability in terms of, because this is part of foreign policy as well, so it brings in a lot of predictability in foreign relations, and that is where India and Europe would remain a very long-term partner, and this is surely to bring gains to both partners.
Final word, Mr. Puri. Where does this, in your view, therefore, while opening up India's market, what implications does this have for India's Make in India initiative? Will this actually have the kind, this word mother of all deals, sometimes we get caught in the hype. Should we dial down a bit on the hype?
No, Rajdeep, let me say this. It's, of course, the biggest trade deal that India has done. And that's the way one should understand it. Now, I want to make one little point to you. This is not a substitute for doing a deal with the Americans. That's a different matter. But does it allow you a certain amount of hedging for India? Yes. It also allows the same thing in a sense for the European Union, perhaps at a lesser level in that sense of the term. So, people are building what you may say elements of this strategic autonomy, and that's par for the course. Now, coming to your main question about investments in India. Look, I believe that the key for India is not trade, but investments in India, growing the Indian economy to whatever $10 trillion by 2047. Can we do it by ourselves? Difficult. Do we need foreign investment? Absolutely. Which is the place in the world from where we get it with technology and a sense of comfort? We can get some from the Middle East too. But Europe is the place where traditionally we've got it. The deal with the UK was useful, FTA was useful, but EU really is the mother of them all. And getting them and giving European businesses the feeling that there is certainty in terms of the rules which play there. And remember, people make investments not just because you have a great market and you have a big market. They make investments when supply chains can be easy, when things can move forward, when trade is also open. And this is something very important, which is why I believe this trade deal gives the right signals. We, of course, now have to build upon it along with an investment agreement. And remember, let me say one word of caution. There is this entire business of CBAM, the carbon border adjustment. And will we be able to overcome that? Will it not? Well, at least at the moment, political signals have been given that let's try and find some ways forward. The European Union, which otherwise said, look, we are the rule givers, they also said, look, there's some advantage to us at this time. Perhaps Donald Trump is the reason for it. Let's deal with another large economy. Let's hedge our bets also. We also looked at it like this. So that's where the elements of win-win. But for me, I think the greatest importance of all of this is that perhaps it's a segue to much larger financial and technological investments by Europeans into India, in the belief that there's certainty for India being a much less protectionist economy.
Let's leave it there. I think wonderful to get some fine voices on this. The general impression is that there is a lot to be gained from this deal, but also certain caveats in place, particularly the ease and speed of doing business within India, which will really have to propel us forward. Thank you all to my guests for joining us now.